I saw the rocket take off myself. I was there in a mission control when the first man stepped out onto the moon, Neil Armstrong. We slept a couple of nights in shipping containers with guards with AK-47s outside. They said, yeah, nobody goes there. And I said, oh, why? They said, there's so many landmines there from the last war that it's too dangerous to walk on. So I made a documentary for the BBC where I canoed the Zambezi, which is 1,700 miles
God, that's a huge
across
achievement.
Africa. Yeah, I don't recommend it. You get something I can only describe as trench bottom. You're fully aware that the guide with you has got a taser in their pocket. They have more pyramids than Egypt, and an ostrich put its head through the window and ate all the biscuits. And when we gave this as an explanation for why there were no biscuits, we were not believed.
Sandi Toksvig, welcome to the Travel Diaries Podcast. It is so lovely to meet you. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. It's lovely to meet you. This is so nice. We can just sit, relax.
Yeah, we can. And it's the Christmas special.
Oh, okay.
So, are you feeling Christmassy is the important question.
I mean, I could celebrate Christmas in July. I mean, it's one of my favourite moments, and every year I think, we should try and do some new things, and the kids just like all the traditions, so we have a whole host of traditions that have to be done every year. So
can you tell me a bit about them?
Yeah, so we celebrate Danish Christmas, which is Christmas Eve.
Right.
It's black tie.
Ooh.
So everybody has to dress up, including the baby. I managed to find a baby grow with a little tuxedo, which is very pleasing. And we've a couple of new things. So on the morning of Christmas Eve, we live deep in 40 acres of ancient woodland. I make everybody put on a red lumberjack shirt, and we go out into the woods. And I don't know how this happens, okay? And you may have an explanation for this. But every year the fairies leave a large urn of hot chocolate in the woods and gold coins on the way. I don't know how it happens. No idea. And then we have a photograph taken of the entire family in our lumberjack shirts. So that's part of that. Then my son makes Danish pastries. And then in the evening, everybody gets dressed up and we have dinner, which is roast duck and red cabbage and all the usual Danish trimmings. And then 2 people are selected to go into the city room to light the real candles on the Christmas tree. And everybody else has to wait outside in height order, which some arguing now, because some of us apparently are getting shorter as we get older, which I don't think is quite right. And then we ring a bell and you go in, and the only light in the room is the candles on the tree. And it's beautiful. And then we sing, hold hands, and the youngest is allowed to choose a song. Last year, my 3-year-old granddaughter chose Incy Wincy Spider, which is not the most Christmassy song, but as it was her choice.
My daughter's favourite too. It's probably in the repertoire this year.
Yeah, it was her choice. So yeah, it's very traditional.
That's so lovely to have those rituals that come up each year. And are they the same as what you had with your siblings and your parents?
Yeah, absolutely. And I honestly thought, as my kids got older and they got married and they had families of their own, that they would all push off and we wouldn't do this anymore. But now they bring their partners, so it's massive. It's a lot of people, but it's lovely. I'm blessed with 2 gorgeous son-in-laws and a lovely daughter-in-law. So
that's so nice.
Yeah, it's really good.
And do you ever spend part of Christmas in Denmark itself? Because I imagine it's very Christmassy there.
We try to go over because the Tivoli Gardens always has a lovely Christmas market.
In Copenhagen?
Yes, in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
So we try and go over as best we can, but it's one of my bugbears. We had a house for 30 years, but since Brexit, it was impossible to keep it. So we had to sell it. So that's it's a bit of a heartbreak for me that that's not a thing anymore. But yeah, we will pop over for a couple of days before just to do some, what I regard as essential shopping.
Yeah. What kind of things is essential in this case?
Well, there's certain foodstuffs that you have to have. There's a particular marzipan that you need. There's a competition to win a marzipan pig each year, and the pig has to be made of the right kind of marzipan, so I shall be buying that. And licorice, the right kind of blackcurrant to go in the red cabbage. So there's, there are important things that matter.
To keep the traditions alive.
Again, it's keeping the traditions alive, but also, who doesn't want to go and have a quick schnapps in Copenhagen? So.
Exactly, especially will it be snowy, do you think?
I mean, I hope so. Could well be. It could well be. That would be nice, yeah.
Lovely. Well, today, Sandi, we are going to go on a journey.
Okay.
Through the 7 chapters of your life's travel diaries.
I'm entirely ready.
Brilliant.
I travel light, is that okay? I don't pack a lot.
You travel light, but you've travelled extensively.
I have, yes.
So this is what is going to make this episode so exciting. start at chapter 1, right at the beginning, and that is your earliest childhood travel memory.
So I could go for the fact that when I was just a few weeks old, I flew with my mother to Africa, and in those days that was quite a thing. It was a prop plane. It was a proper old school plane, and it took about 24 hours to go. But of course...
24 hours in a propeller plane?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, your brave mother.
You stopped every now and then for refueling, but of course I don't remember it. So I was really trying to think what my earliest travel memory was. And when we lived in Copenhagen, I must have been about 4, my mother and I would get the tram from the suburbs where we lived, a place called Hellerup, which is where I was born, the number 6 tram, and we would go into the centre of Copenhagen, and there was the only department store called Magasin du Nord, which they thought was very fancy because it had a French name. Mm-hmm. And my mother and I would go there and we would have a roast beef sandwich. This was the thing. And getting on the tram every Saturday morning is my earliest memory of travelling. And I think it's really important that we remember that travel isn't just about getting on a plane or a big cruise ship or anything like that. I always say to people, if you haven't got any money, take the bus from the nearest stop where you live and go just one stop and get off, and you will find something interesting.
Yeah.
So years ago I wrote a book called Between the Stops about the bus here in London, and I just got off at each one of the stops, and I did discover something fascinating at each place. So I always want to be clear with everybody, travel is not just some luxury, it's not just for somebody who's got, disposable income. It can be for anybody if you've got the attitude to it and the curiosity. So I've chosen something very ordinary, which was, in those days, the number 6 tram.
That's lovely. And when you were doing the book, what was your kind of biggest revelation when you were doing the buses?
That there was somebody of interest everywhere. I discovered, Charlie Chaplin had lived in one of the squares where I got off. So the bus went from... It was the number 12 bus, and it went from Dulwich Library, where I had spent a lot of time, I love libraries, to the BBC, and they had 36 stops. And each time I was going, when I was going to work, I thought, I wonder what's at that stop. And you would just find something curious and extraordinary, or sometimes something quite small. I found the last hitching post for horses in London was at one of the stops for the number 12. And I really loved it. I loved the exploration of it and just paying a bit more attention to what you're passing through every day instead of just sitting on the bus.
Same as looking, that phrase, look up, seeing what's around you.
Yeah.
Do you think that so your father was a very, very famous person in Danish television, a foreign correspondent. Do you think that having a life when you were younger where you were travelling from place to place, living in different places, has made you more kind of curious and more... tickled by those kind of little things that you see?
No question about it. So my father taught me that everywhere in the world has something to commend it. That it would be very easy to say, this place is not very interesting, or this place is a bit without merit. I mean, it's not true. Everywhere has got something. You just have to look for it. And he also taught me that the fascination is always in the detail. So I remember when Prince Charles got married to Diana, my father was broadcasting live for the Danish audience, and he wanted to find a Danish connection. There wasn't really one. And then he discovered, to his great delight, and this is where he had really researched, that Dame Kiri Te Kanawa was singing, and she was wearing earrings made by a Danish jeweller. And there we were. There we had discovered the thing.
Even though she's a New Zealander.
Yes, there we had discovered a Danish connection, and he was so thrilled and excited. But I love that. I love taking the time to look for something and finding some detail.
And kind of by proxy then, did these kind of major cultural moments like Princess Diana's wedding, I know also the landing on the moon, these kind of things, did they kind of punctuate your life in a way that they wouldn't, like the average young child, essentially?
I mean, I suppose so. It was just my childhood, so you don't have any other childhood. It's the only one I know.
Yes, I guess so.
My dad didn't believe in formal education, which was just as well because I wasn't very good at paying attention. So he was endlessly taking us out of school. So we went to quite a lot of events where you just think, wow. So, the moon landing, I was there in a mission control when the first man stepped out onto the moon, Neil Armstrong. But I was also in Chicago when the rioting happened in 1968, sitting in a hotel room looking out the window at riots going on. He thought it was part of life that you paid attention to the news. From as early as I can remember, once my brother and I could read, we were expected to have read the first 3 pages of the New York Times before dinner so that we had something to talk about, because he thought most things that you talked about at school were a bit boring.
Yeah.
So he treated us more like little adults than he did as children. But what it means is I think now, I think I could be happy anywhere. I think I could find a reason to live almost anywhere. And I have tried an awful lot of places to live.
Yeah. Yeah, a random thought just popped into my mind. I just listened to an interview with the tennis player Nick Kyrgios, the Australian tennis player, and he was saying how the moon landing was categorically not true, you know, the conspiracy theories.
Oh.
So Sandi, you can help me prove that it truly did take place. You witnessed it firsthand.
Yeah. I don't think there are that many adults who are good at acting. Because it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. I saw the rocket take off myself.
Yeah.
I was there on the beach, 1.5 miles, which was as close as anybody was allowed to get. I watched Apollo 11 climb through the sky and disappear. I was in mission control with the flickering pictures, and so I don't think it would have been possible to fake it. So
Nick, you heard it here first, okay?
Yeah. I love that somebody's still that determined.
Yeah, he's still there,
yeah.
chatting to Louis Theroux about it.
Okay, and the earth is flat.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I think so. So you mentioned, of course, was it 6 weeks you were taken off to live in Africa?
Yeah.
Do you have many memories of that part of your life? Those, obviously not that young, but what your early childhood there?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of my first words were Swahili.
Really?
I remember the marvellous women who used to look after us. I remember my mother's face as I was in a paddling pool in the back garden of a place called Bulawayo.
In what country?
Rhodesia, it was, as was.
Yeah, so it was Zimbabwe, yeah.
And a snake was going past the paddling pool, and I just thought it was interesting until I saw my mother's face in the house looking out the window and realising maybe it wasn't quite as interesting as I thought it was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I remember my brother and I getting into terrible trouble. We were left in the back of the Land Rover with a packet of biscuits, and an ostrich put its head through the window and ate all the biscuits. And when we gave this as an explanation for why there were no biscuits, we were not believed.
Oh, no.
Shocking.
What an amazing potential excuse, a real life excuse. How fantastic. So you were in the bush, you were like really among the wildlife.
Well, I mean, you're talking about 1962, 1963. A lot of the areas where we were not wildly developed. Mm-hmm. But I remember it with great fondness. I thought it was fantastic. I've been lucky enough to go back to Zimbabwe and adjacent countries. I made a documentary for the BBC where I canoed the Zambezi, which is 1,700 miles.
God, that's a huge achievement.
Africa. Yeah, I don't recommend it. You get something I can only describe as trench bottom.
Oh, God.
It's damp.
A continuously wet bot.
Yeah, it's quite damp.
A soggy bottom.
Yeah,
sorry. That's all we're going to say about Bake Off.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So we move on to chapter 2, and that is the first place that you fell in love with.
So I'm going to stay in Copenhagen. It didn't mean to, because I have travelled all over the world. But the first place that I thought was the most magical place I'd ever been in my life is the Tivoli Gardens, which is, as far as I know, I think it's the oldest amusement park in the world. And it is in the heart of Copenhagen, and it's still there. Yeah. I mean, it's the most incredible place in that it's prime real estate. You'd think by now somebody would have developed it into housing or so. There's still the same Rutsjebane, the roller coaster that was there when I was a child, is made of wood. So my whole life I didn't go on it, right? Because I thought it would look terrifying. Of course now it's very tame, right? So finally, about 5 years ago, my wife said, "This is ridiculous. You're in your 60s. You've never been on it because you think it looks frightening. We're going to go." So we went. Terrifying. I'm never doing it again. I was completely right. I mean, I nearly vomited all the way around. But it is a magical place full of fairy lights, full of every kind of cuisine. There's the fast rides. They have some improvement now on the roller coaster, but there's also gentle things, and you can sit quietly or you can have a loud time and you can go and see a show. It's still somewhere I return to over and over again. And in fact, my 60th birthday, my children surprised me with dinner in the Tivoli Gardens. So it has my heart. I thought it was magic then, and I think it is magic now.
Was it magical taking your little family to experience it for the first time when they were younger?
It's so lovely. And there's a game we used to play called Galoppen. And so you sit in a long row, and they have about 15 metal horses, and you roll balls into a hole in front of you, and as your ball hits the hole, your horse moves forward, right? I have been playing this game my entire life, and now even my 7-year-old grandson says, we have to go play Galoppen.
Oh.
So it's still, it's a special place for all of us.
Do you think that having a dual nationality, essentially, or in your case, actually, is it 3 nationalities? Did you get a US citizenship as well?
I didn't. My sister's is an American.
Yeah,
my sister is an American citizen, but no, I spent so long there that it absolutely still feels like part of my home.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether it is why you have these clearly lovely traditions that are linked to your different cultures in a way. Do you think do you hold on to them more dearly because you're a kind of hybrid?
Yeah, I am. Well, I'm a cultural mongrel.
Yeah.
And again, I think it stands me in good stead. Very little phases me. There's not much food that I think I wouldn't try it or wouldn't give it a go. I like learning new, what you call shibboleths, things that make you understand a culture a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time when I first moved to live in Britain full time to understand some of the British shibboleths. I don't know why people discuss whether the jam or the cream goes on the scone first. Who cares? I have never understood.
What about the weather? Are you passionate about the weather?
No, and I don't understand why you would have hot and cold taps. Right, in Denmark we only have a mixer tap. Why do you have a hot and cold tap? So it's either too hot or it's too cold.
Yeah.
Why don't you just have a mixer tap? That's beyond me. And the other thing I don't understand, which the British are obsessed with, is drafts. Sorry about this draft. Well, don't have one. Have a
draft excluder.
Well, no.
Or a better fitting window.
That.
Yeah.
I don't even have a draft excluder. Have a window that fits.
Oh my gosh! Can you say this to my husband, please?
Okay.
We're literally having this argument over and over about our chilly front room.
Yeah. No, it's
just
not
get
necessary.
better windows, isn't it?
I live in practically an Arctic country, and no, we don't bother. We have doors and windows that fit.
Yeah.
So there are a few things that I still think. What
are there some British things so that you've it amuses you that you've now kind of taken on yourself?
Well, I'm obsessed with a cup of tea, which is ridiculous. And I genuinely think I could give up anything. I could no problem giving up alcohol, no problem giving up, I don't know, chips or something, but not tea.
Tea is the essential.
It's
English
critical.
breakfast tea.
Yeah, English breakfast tea.
Yeah.
Actually, most specifically from Betty's Tea Rooms in Harrogate.
Oh,
I order the tea bags specially. Best cup of tea I've ever had in my life.
Oh my gosh!
It's a quick plug. They're not even paying me. It's a quick plug for Betty's Tea Rooms.
Wow. Well, we really need to take heed of this because that is an important recommendation. I'll include it in the show notes. So your dad was this huge cultural figure in Denmark. Did you ever imagine following in his footsteps, or were you always drawn to more of the kind of performing arts?
I had no intention to be in the theatre or in performance or follow my dad into broadcasting. None of those things. I was going to be a lawyer. I was going to be a human rights lawyer, specifically. I was going to save the world in some small way. And I was going to stand up in court and go, my lord, clearly the defendant is, whatever.
I do feel like that could have been a role you would have done very well.
So I went to university and I studied to be a human rights lawyer, but I was also, as a sort of sidebar, in something called the Footlights, which they have at Cambridge, which is a sort of review thing. And when I was in it, I was seen by a professional director, and he said, would I like to come and work with him for a year after university? And I thought, I'll just have a gap year after university as well as before. So that's 45 years ago. I'm having the longest gap year in history. I had no intention of doing what I do. I have never applied for a job. I just have fallen from one thing to another. But any day now, I'm going to be a human rights lawyer.
You'd have to qualify first, though, wouldn't you, Sandi?
Yeah, there is a slight hiccup in this plan.
You have to go back to Cambridge and do that final year of law at least. Because then you did anthropology, right? Which I also studied, so
yes.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And it is kind of, though, a similarly itinerant lifestyle to, I guess, your dad, and that, there's a lot of touring involved in your life or being on sets. Do you think, you followed in his footsteps in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely have followed in his footsteps. I love live broadcasting. I can do a piece to camera at the drop of a hat. I've written books as he wrote books. So yeah, weirdly, I have kind of replicated what he did. And I've done a lot of complicated travel over the years, which he also did. I spent an extensive amount of time in Sudan, which was difficult. I did the trip I told you about, canoeing the Zambezi. Next year, I'm already booked. I'm away 3 months, traveling in the United States and Japan.
Wow.
Making documentaries. So yes, the answer is I have followed in my dad's footsteps.
Yeah.
But it was not the plan.
So chapter 3 then, I guess it leads really nicely on to chapter 3, which is the place where you learnt the most about yourself. Was there a place that you really felt was formative at a point in your life?
Yes, although it came late in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to a place called Pequari Lodge in Costa Rica.
Ooh.
So my wife and I decided we hadn't been to South America, we would go. And weirdly, I don't know why, it's ridiculous, we thought it would be a bit frightening. It was the most wonderful, wonderful place. We've been, I think, well, I can't really think of anywhere better. So we flew into San Jose and immediately loved it. And then I said, I want to do something really daring. So I discovered an eco-lodge that you could only get to by whitewater rafting. Now, the problem with this is that I'm not a terribly good swimmer. So she didn't think this was a very good idea. But anyway, I thought, how exciting to go to a hotel that you have to get to by whitewater rafting. Turned out I loved whitewater rafting. I thought it was absolutely the most marvellous thing.
Applying that canoeing experience from the
just
past.
Throw yourself in. Right. So we arrived at this place and we were there for 5 days. It's deep in the tropical rainforest, and there was no electricity. On purpose, because it's an eco-lodge. Mm-hmm. So we lived in a wooden hut lit by candles. We didn't have any internet. You could hear the howler monkeys at night. And I used to be frightened of the dark, really frightened. Mm-hmm. And we went for a walk in the jungle with this local guide. And he said, what do you think of it? I said, oh, well, I'm afraid of the dark. And he said, and what do you think is in the dark that isn't there in the daytime? And I thought, oh, that's a really good question, because there aren't any bogeymen. I know that. That's not really a thing. And it was almost like I was going to say it's like a light switch. But I'm no longer afraid of the dark, and I now revel in it. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I learnt to enjoy the calm, the tranquility, the beauty of the dark. And I loved going down to dinner. We would go down a path lit only by candles. And when you got there, dinner was whatever they served us. I think we all have too much choice. I think it's a wonderful thing for somebody to say, we've made this meal for you, we hope you like it, and that's what there is. I loved everything about it, and I often think of that time of being out of touch with the world. I was able to say to everybody, I'm going away for 5 days and I cannot be contacted.
Yeah, that's like the ultimate luxury, I think, moving forward, is a place where there's no phone signal, no Wi-Fi. I really think it will be treated as a luxury as such. Interesting, though, about the simplicity of that, because I feel as though that kind of equates to the Scandi mentality as well. Like the Scandis value a more simple way of life more broadly, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, so there's a Danish word that doesn't fully translate, enkelt, and it means beautiful through simplicity.
Oh, what is the word again?
Enkelt.
Anklet. Anklet.
So a beautiful piece
like anklet?
No, enkelt. It's really hard to say in English.
I imagine there are a few J's and other letters hiding in there.
But it's a lovely expression. It is a perfect piece of silver jewellery, such as Kiri Takano might have worn. But it's something really, a plain white candle that's lit is enkelt. And then we have hygge as well, which is the cozy thing of being together with people that you love. And just having a nice time. So when I met my future wife, I said to her, where would you like to go on honeymoon? And I thought she'd say, the Maldives or somewhere sort of fancy. And she said, I'd like to go to the Arctic. And I thought, I'm 100% marrying the right person. And we went up to the Norwegian Arctic, and we stayed in fishermen's huts, which were just basic wooden buildings with a bed. And sometimes, if you were lucky, a single ring gas burner to make yourself some supper. We would go down to to the port and get some fish and just make fish on this little ring burner. And there was no TV and again, no Wi-Fi. I don't think we've ever been happier. So it's that stripping life back to the basics.
The enkelt.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
That's very good, yeah.
So that was the Lofoten Islands.
Yeah.
So I think that is, I mean, also very much a hidden gem destination. What was it about the landscape also that, and if you were to paint a picture of it, like what could potential visitors expect when they got there?
Well, you know, when children draw a mountainscape and they do great big jagged lines of it, it looks like that. It looks like a child has drawn it. The most astonishing thing is that you feel like you can breathe for the first time. The air is like a banquet. You just keep taking great gulps of air. And we had one day where we were sort of laughing by the end because we saw sea eagles and porpoises and whales, and we were sort of going mad. It's like the whole world had come out to greet us. And I remember on the Lofoten Islands, we were yet another fisherman's hut, and everybody trusts you. And the man said to me, "Here is your key." And I said, "Was that the key to the hut?" He said, "No, you don't need to lock up. It's the key to your motorboat." And I went, "I'm sorry, what?" And it came with the motorboat. And we would go to a restaurant in a motorboat and come back again. And on the way, you'd see amazing wildlife. There's something about getting back in touch and crystal clear water that you can see. It just seems like forever you can see down to the bottom. I don't know, it was a simple, we've been 3 times now.
Oh, lovely.
And the last time we went, there was a sort of little pub. And I went in and I said, the man said, "Would you like a drink?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "What do you have?" He said, "We have beer." And I said, "Yes, what else do you have?" "No, we have beer." I said, "What kind of beer?" "One kind of beer." And you know what? That was lovely. We had one kind of beer.
Yeah.
And we sat on a terrace looking at jaggedy mountains and thought, yeah, this is the life.
Oh, dreamy. How do you get there? Is it a journey to get there in itself, or is it relatively easy?
It's relatively easy. The thing I recommend is to get your way to Bergen.
Bergen, yeah.
And then make your way up by the Hurtigruten small ferry service. So not the cruise ships.
Not the cruises.
But take the tiny little ferries and go port to port, making your way up. So we rented a car in Bergen and then just kept going, heading north. It became slightly challenging because they do excellent hot dogs on the Hurtigruten ferries, and I had to have one each time. So it was a very short ride. We had to be quick so I could get my hot dog because it was so good. But that is a lovely way to travel.
What is it about Scandinavian hot dogs that are so excellent?
They're just the best.
What is it though? What do you think makes them so delicious in particular? Is it the onions?
It's the fried onions maybe.
Yeah.
It's very, very, there's the crispy onions. I also think, weirdly, they bother to put good meat in their hot dogs.
Yes.
I mean, not to be rude about anybody else's hot dogs.
Yeah. Well, as someone who spent a lot of their childhood in New York, I guess you have got a good point of comparison there.
Yeah, those you don't. I mean, I still love a New York hot dog, but it's not really meat.
Not one from the side of the street necessarily.
Yeah, not necessarily.
No. I'd love to go to the Lofoten Islands. They look so magnificent. And is that a place that you could also see, like, the fjords? Is it kind of a gateway into the fjords?
Yeah, so you can do, but then you also see a heck of a lot of tourists. So the trick is to not go on any of the boats going up the big fjords because it's just madness.
Right.
It's too crowded.
Yeah.
I always think the thing to do is to try and find a little town that nobody else is all that bothered about. So we went to a place called Henningsvær on Lofoten. And had the great privilege of being away from the madding crowd. And I think that's great.
Okay, gorgeous. Well, our big chapter, Sandi, is chapter 4, and that is your all-time favourite destination.
Oh, this is so difficult because there's so many places that I've been that I absolutely love. Sudan has a huge place in my heart. I spent quite a lot of time there.
So what brought you there?
I made a documentary, 6 1-hours, about Sudan, largest country in Africa, 1 million square miles. Well, before it was divided in 2. And when I went, there was no trouble at all. I mean, it was rumbling, but it was still perfectly okay to go. It is one of the singular most beautiful places that I've ever been. The people were fantastic. And there are bits of that trip which have stayed with me forever. So on every street corner, I used to find there would be a woman of a certain age, cross-legged, with a little fire she'd made out of charcoal, and she would be boiling a kettle, and she would make what was known locally as coffee with medicine. And coffee with medicine consisted of black coffee with ginger in it, and maybe a couple of other spices like cardamom, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And every day, as we were traveling constantly, I would sit cross-legged with one of these women on a street corner, and I would have coffee with medicine. And the whole crew said to me, Sandy, what are you doing? You have no idea if it's safe. I said, look, I've watched them, and they clean everything with boiled water. They're really meticulous in what they're doing. And if they call it coffee with medicine, I bet it's good for you. So I was there for a very long time filming, and I was the only member of the crew who didn't get sick. And to this day, every morning, I make coffee with medicine.
You too?
I have never changed that since the time I was in Sudan.
Wow.
And I believe it's what keeps me healthy.
That's incredible.
So it stayed with me. And those women, those wonderful, wonderful women, and, my Arabic appalling, I can sort of say, how many children do you have and that kind of thing. But there was something very comforting about sitting on a street corner with the woman making coffee. And sometimes now when I go into a coffee place in London or pretty much anywhere in the world now, and people are going, I'll have a half-dry, skimmy, scented thing. I just think, do you know what? You just need a black coffee with some medicine in it and you'll be fine. You don't need all this stuff.
Am I right in thinking that Sudan has some amazingly preserved pyramids?
Oh, phenomenal, darling. They have more pyramids than Egypt.
Yeah.
The pyramids of the
and
Nubian
it's just
people.
due to lack of tourism that people aren't really able to see them, but they're amazing, aren't
They're
they?
extraordinary, and I had the great privilege of being able to climb to the top of a couple of the pyramids, and we saw no one. We saw no one at all.
And there aren't like security guards patrolling in the same way as in Egypt.
There's nothing, and it's breathtakingly beautiful. And it's a whole history of a people who was so civilized and had massive irrigation and great agricultural swathes of land and stuff that has sort of been forgotten about.
Yeah.
And the Nubians were such a threat that Tutankhamun had pictures of Nubian people engraved on the soles of his shoes because he wanted to walk upon them because he despised them because they were the great threat. But nobody.
We don't really know the story.
We don't really know
the
story of them. But that was one of the great privileges of my life, was to climb up to the top of these pyramids. Though we had a few moments as well because we were late coming into town one evening at the next place that we were filming. And the sun was setting, and we saw this magnificent sunset. So we climbed up this hillside to film the sunset. It was marvellous, and we came back into town, and we were waxing lyrical about it. And they said, yeah, nobody goes there. And I said, oh, why? They said, there's so many landmines there from the last war that it's too dangerous to walk on. So I felt very lucky to be alive.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. There's a lot to contend with in a country like that, especially when you want to do it justice on a TV program, and I suppose show the light and the shade.
Yeah, there were moments when we were afraid. I'll be honest, we slept a couple of nights in shipping containers with guards with AK-47s outside because it wasn't quite safe where we were. We saw a lot of poverty. I remember seeing in Khartoum, a child of 3 or 4 carrying a baby, and I said, is that child, why are they by themselves? Where is their mother? And they said, well, most likely the mother has died giving birth to that baby, and the only support the baby has is the 3 or 4-year-old who's looking after it.
Oh my gosh.
So there were some heartbreaking things, and now there's trouble, and it breaks my heart because it's a magnificent and glorious place full of magnificent and glorious people.
Yeah, you just kind of have to just really hope that things will change so that more people can get to experience its beauty and its people.
Yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It will always have a part of my heart. And every morning when I have my coffee, I think of those women.
I feel as though that wasn't going to be your all-time favourite destination, though. I feel like that was one of them. But was there another one that was about to come up?
Well, what's terrible is that it's the same every time. I keep going back to Copenhagen. So when I'm tired, or when I really need a break, that is probably still... actually, this New Year's, I'm going to New York for a week because, again, it's still part of my homeland. But there's something about Copenhagen. If you haven't been... Have you been to Copenhagen?
Yes, I have,
okay.
Yes.
It's... I don't know. It's calm and beautiful.
My favourite restaurant is Host.
Oh, yes.
Love Host.
Yeah.
Told a lot of people about that.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
But from somebody who knows the city so well, it's such a popular city break for UK listeners, what would be like a few of your must-dos, must-sees?
So these are things that probably only Danish people would do. So again, back to the Tivoli Gardens, there's an old restaurant called Grøften, and I think it's probably the oldest restaurant in the Tivoli Gardens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right next to, there's a theatre which has got a peacock as the curtain. It's got the tail feathers of a peacock as the curtain. And right next to it, and Grøften actually means the ditch.
The ditch.
Yeah. And when I was a child, this was where all the actors of Copenhagen used to meet. And it has expanded now, the restaurant, and it's much bigger than it used to be. But at the very back is the oldest section of the restaurant, and it's called the Theatre Cafe. And that's where the actors used to meet. And my father would sit there with all the famous guys. And whenever I book, I still book in the Theatre Cafe. And I always say to them, that's when they say, don't you want to sit in the big crowded room? No, and it's very small. And it's unbelievably traditional Danish food, so I recommend that. Mm-hmm. I recommend going up the Round Tower, which is the first one of the first observatories in Europe. And you have to you walk up, but it's not steps; it's a circular path, because the king liked to go to the top of the observatory, but he liked to ride up. He couldn't be asked to walk.
So a man after my own heart.
And look out for a little bench at the very top. You could easily miss it. It's just underneath the window, and you might not be looking. But in Denmark, it's known as the kissing bench, and Kysebænken. And you go up to the very top. And if you're there with somebody that you love, have a sit on the kissing bench.
Oh, that's so nice. Oh, I love those recommendations. Oh, I'd love to go back. I mean, it's so easy from the UK, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where do you stay now that you don't have your house there?
Well, the last time I was there, we were thrilled to find an Airbnb, which was a boat on the canal.
Oh, cool.
In Christianshavn. So
you used to live on a boat, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I still have a boat in London.
You still have it, yeah.
I still have a boat in London.
So are you just drawn to water? You love water in general?
You just sleep better.
Yeah, or the rocking.
The rock to sleep, yeah.
Yeah.
So, we stayed on a boat, which is one of my favourite. There's some great places now around the world that you can stay that are just a little bit different. We're always looking out for, the lighthouse that you can stay in, or the boat, or the something. I get very excited by those things.
Well, I mean, Extraordinary Escapes. It's a very good segue.
Yeah, there you go.
Which I absolutely loved, the dream travel job, obviously. So you were uncovering these incredible properties throughout the British Isles. Was there one in particular I wanted to ask? Because you went to so many cool places that you would recommend to everybody to visit.
Well, Sindi V and I visited a very small island where there was just this house by itself and a lighthouse. She's the most brilliant comic. She's originally from Mumbai. But because she's married to a Dane, she speaks Danish. It's the most extraordinary relationship between the two of us, that she is of Indian origin, I'm of Danish origin, and what we speak together is Danish, is one of the strangest things.
Yeah.
And she was a little afraid, because we was just the two of us. Once the crew left, there was just the two of us on this island by ourselves. But I think, again, I was trying to teach her the beauty of being left alone and just the sound of the waves and so on. So I think that's probably my favourite.
Is that a place that anybody could go and stay at?
Yeah. So all of these properties were places that you can stay at. Now, some of them I stayed with Deborah Meaden in a place, a wildlife sanctuary in the Arctic, again, back in the Arctic, where they look after wolves. But
was that Wolf Lodge?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I was literally just researching that the other day.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it's like an exclusive use.
It's like
extraordinarily expensive.
Or something
for
3 nights. Do you know what I mean?
I imagine it's what. Did you watch Succession?
Yeah, it's exactly.
It's where they go on a retreat to kind
exactly
of thrash something out.
Yeah, and you can be licked by wolves if that's your choice. Deborah Meaden was right in there. She loved it. So it was amazing. But theoretically anybody could stay there. But I'm really all about the kind of travel that you can do, which is for everybody. I'm much more interested in egalitarian travel, where you say, this is something everybody can do.
Yeah.
I think Copenhagen, can be expensive, but it is possible on somebody's
accessible.
Radar. It's accessible.
Yeah.
Wolf Lodge, not so much, because it's. I think Prince Harry and Meghan had stayed there the weekend before we went.
Really?
So it's not
any traces of them around you could.
I didn't sniff it out.
The wolves were doing that.
Yeah,
I
wolves.
guess.
Yes, that is weird. I have been licked by wolves, which is weird.
My daughter is obsessed with wolves. I think from Wendy Wolf and Peppa Pig. You probably are familiar. So I really want to take her, but sadly, you have to be over 18 to go and be with the wolves. So it's going to be a wait.
I think it's sensible because you meet them kneeling in the snow. And I'm very small. And it was quite overwhelming.
As in a bit scary?
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah.
They're big. Now, these particular wolves have been hand-reared and everybody tells you that it's fine, but you're fully aware that the guide with you has got a taser in their pocket. And it was... Deborah Meaden was more into it than I was. I was honestly a little bit frightened, so I don't think it would be a good idea for a child because I'm child size.
It's not like Wendy Wolf. No,
it's not.
There was no Wendy Wolf.
I mean, they're still wild creatures.
Yeah. Did you feel a kind of special affinity with them? Like having had that kind of unique up close?
Yeah, you're supposed to, aren't you? No, I just thought...
Spooky.
I thinking about mulled wine in the house, mainly. That was my main thought, to be honest with you.
I read that you have been to 48 out of 50 US states. Yes. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Still 48?
Yeah, I need to go to Hawaii and Alaska.
But those are two of the best ones.
I know. And the thing I want to do is I want to go to Washington State up in the top corner and then walk to Alaska. And apparently it takes about 3 weeks. And walk the old trail.
Oh, wow.
To go up the way the prospectors, the gold, the diggers used to go up.
Yeah.
But I'm maybe getting too old. I don't know. We'll see.
No, that's the next documentary that
I
look for. I'm like that king in Denmark. I'd rather be pushed up.
Fine.
All the way up to Alaska. Okay. But maybe I could go on a sledge or something similar. Yeah.
No, those two I've yet to do. But there's so much in the world that one still has left to tick off.
Oh yeah, Hawaii is amazing.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask, I suppose, is most not that many people have had a chance to be to so many of the US states. Was there one in particular that surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, there's some places that you just think, wow. So Nebraska, for example, you can drive for hundreds of miles and not see anybody. There's a lot of corn. Do you know what I mean? It's
a lot of corn.
Great deal of corn. So that was surprising.
Were you on a road trip when you were seeing a lot of these?
I wrote a book about the Oregon Trail, which is the route that the so-called pioneers took from East Coast to the West Coast. And my wife and I, so we drove it. And we stopped at every single tin pot museum on the way. And we were pretty much only people in the country that were interested. We stopped in all these tiny little museums. And the real trouble with American history is that mostly they've got rid of it. They're not that keen on getting it. I remember going to the Benjamin Franklin Museum in Philadelphia, and they had a bank of 100 telephones, and you could ring famous people and see what they thought of Benjamin Franklin. Now, it's quite a nice idea, apart from one of the numbers was for Plato. Now, my guess is that Plato didn't have anything to say about Benjamin Franklin, so it was not the best museum.
No. I mean, as somebody who has been, such an important voice for women's rights, and as somebody who's passionate about the US, and I am too, I'm a US citizen as well. How are you feeling about traveling there in the future?
Well, as I say, I'm making a big documentary, doing 6 1-hours next year in America. I will always love America. I have still got friends from high school, and I will be seeing them, in fact, when I go over this time. So my love doesn't change. I'm saddened by the turn of events politically, obviously. I don't think it's good for women. I don't think it's good generally for justice and the Constitution, those things. So I watch it with some trepidation. But what I know is that individually, when you meet Americans, they're wonderful and friendly and glorious. I think the political system possibly needs a little rectification.
I mean, were you in touch with your friends who were living out there at the time of the election and getting their responses?
Lots of tears.
Yeah.
And I wore my Kamala Harris hat every day, all the way. Yeah. Through, not that it makes any difference what I think, but just not ready for a woman president, I think.
Do you think that's what it is? Do you think fundamentally it came more down to gender?
Yeah, I think it comes down to misogyny, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And we've still got a lot to do.
How do you feel about where we're at in the UK? In entertainment in particular, because I mean, when you broke into the industry, it was just so heavily male dominated, and then I kind of was reflecting on what's changed? And I mean, it's still male dominated.
It hasn't really changed.
Yeah.
Indeed, I was discussing it with some people this morning. We still don't have the late night chat show hosted by a woman, because I don't know where we can't stay up that late, or it interferes with our cycles. I don't know what the problem is. It's still
I
rare
laugh, but it's not funny. Yeah.
It's still rare to be a woman in charge of a panel show.
Yes.
It's not really a common thing.
And do you find that people say to you, oh, you know, how is it wrangling all these powerful men? Yeah, people ask you that kind of thing.
Well, mostly they say, you know, well, it must have been terrifying taking over from Stephen. And you think, not really. I've known Stephen since I was 19.
Yeah, because you were at the Cambridge around the same time, right?
Yeah, he's just a silly boy. And so I didn't really worry. But that's the thing. It's like, it was almost like I was too presumptuous to dare to think that I might have read as many books as he has. So there's still that, and you know, lately there's more stories about bad behaviour, and you know, I know of more stories that are yet to come, which have not yet made headlines, but I suspect one day will. So I'm afraid I don't see massive changes. I would have liked to, but I don't see it. Although some fabulous young women comics who I have great faith in the next generation. I think Rosie Jones, for example, is one of them.
Yeah,
one of the most
brilliant.
Fabulous women of all time. So
yeah, and such an inspiring advocate on so many ways. And she was on Extraordinary Escapes with you, wasn't she?
Yeah, I really.
Where did you go with her?
Love her. Oh God, I can't remember. All I can remember is that in order to get down the beach, she had to go on a horse, quite rightly, because of her particular things about walking. And I had to lead the horse, and I'm terrified of horses. And I said to her, I have to tell you how much I love you that I'm doing this, because this is a terrifying thing.
So our next chapter is chapter 5, and that is your hidden gem. So that is a place that you love, that maybe my listeners don't know that much about.
So I'm going to go back to Denmark, and there is a wonderful town called Aarhus, which I suspect a lot of British visitors will not have gone to. And there are many reasons to go there, not least of which is that when they were tearing down quite a lot of old buildings, so we're talking sort of medieval buildings, in various towns where they're being redeveloped, instead of doing that, they decided to put them all together and create an old town just of these buildings. So there's about 75 buildings in the old town.
Wow.
It's very much like walking through Hans Christian Andersen time. It's glorious and beautiful. There's a theatre. And there are shops which are working as shops. It's a sort of museum, and it isn't. It's really like a town museum. I love to go there. They have incredible festivals in the summer. I went to a festival they called the Festival of Beautiful Mistakes, which was just fantastic, where they took two different art forms and they put them together to see what would happen. So I went to see, for example, a cartoonist who was drawing on an overhead projector, working with a rapper, and the two of them were doing a show together, and they'd never met before. And it was just fantastic. We stayed in a hotel where we looked down on a white square where they had placed 36 bright red chairs, and then there was a camera above, and they were photographing the chairs, and people could move them in any place they wanted to. The most remarkable thing about it was not one chair got stolen or damaged. There was just a sort of continuous piece of art that was happening. So the Festival of Beautiful Mistakes was just great.
Great idea. I love that.
And we discovered a hotel, which is my hidden gem, called the Villa Provence. And it's this tiny boutique hotel done up in a sort of shabby chic French way, but it's one of the most relaxing, beautiful, fabulous places I've ever been. There was an honour bar, and we found ourselves gravitating. Normally I'm a bit shy and don't want to meet too many people. We found ourselves gravitating to this bar, and people were mixing each other drinks, and it was just everything about the place. They had managed to create something extraordinary and friendly, and then you step out and you're in Aarhus. So I loved everything about it.
Oh, it sounds amazing. And is it on the water?
So the hotel is not on the
no,
hotel.
but
it's
the
not, yes.
Aarhus is. Yeah.
It's magnificent. You should go. It's really beautiful.
Is it with AR?
It's double A for the British.
Double A, yeah. And where would you fly into to go there?
To go to Aarhus, you'd probably go to Billund, and drive up. Billund is in the heart of Jutland, and it's where Legoland is, so they have many flights.
Oh, right. Okay.
The original Legoland.
Dual centre, medieval town and Lego.
Yes, all right. So it's got everything going for it.
Yeah, yeah. Have you been to Legoland?
My darling, I was there when it opened. So that's how
Oh,
old I
were
am,
you
so.
really? And is it amazing?
It is fantastic. My children practically grew up in Legoland. Our house that we don't have anymore was 10 minutes from Legoland.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I've never been myself, but I've heard the one in Windsor's very enticing.
Yeah, no, the one in Windsor's on a hill. This one's a flat. It's better.
Okay. Yeah, it's harder to build Lego on it, on a slant.
I know, right? I hadn't thought that through.
Ultimate chapter is chapter 6, Sandy, and that is the place that you would never go back to.
I don't know that there is such a thing, because, as I said, everywhere has somewhere to commend it. However, in 2022, I was on tour in Australia, and I became extremely ill, and inexplicably, I collapsed and then was taken to the Sydney Eye Hospital. I know. None of the press phoned me, I think mainly because I was in the Sydney Eye Hospital. Nothing wrong with my eyes. But it was frightening, and my poor wife was terrified. But there was some, it was quite funny. So
why were you there, though?
So my lung collapsed, and nobody was quite sure what was wrong. And I could hear the other side of the curtain, when you're lying there, you've got masks and stuff, and everything all covered. And I was scared. And I could hear the doctor saying to my wife, has Sandy been in touch with any koalas? And my wife said, oh, yes, we went to the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary in Brisbane and had our photograph done with a koala. Well, it turns out that all koalas have got chlamydia. I did not know this. And it is possible for a human who's been cuddling a koala to catch koala chlamydia pneumonia. And for a brief while, they thought that's what I had. And even though I thought I was dying, I was crying with laughter. So I thought, if I die of koala chlamydia pneumonia, the Daily Mail will never get over it. Fortunately, I just had pneumonia, koala chlamydia pneumonia. I haven't been, it was very difficult. It was near Christmas. It was very hard to get home. It was very tough for my wife, who was in Sydney with nothing to do apart from visit me in the hospital. I'm anxious about returning, because it was a frightening experience. I'm sure it's not Sydney's fault. Just going to put it out there.
Yeah.
But I have been offered to go back next year, and I'm a little
trepidatious.
I'm a little anxious.
No koala visits this time, just in case.
They've since banned the practice
because of the.
I don't know why.
And can I just establish? Did they think you got chlamydia through your eye?
No, the eye hospital inexplicably has one ward for kind of critical people that's got nothing to do with their eyes.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So
okay.
I don't know. I think they were just fooling around. But they were very sweet to me, and they were very nice to save my life. So.
I mean, you say about Australia being trepidatious. There are a lot of things there that can really
want to kill you.
Kill you, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So no, I can't decide. I'll let you know if I'm going to go back. I'm not, and it's not. It's no fault of the place. It just was a scary experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. And being so far away from home as well, it's just always like if something scary happens, it's just much harder to deal with. At least she was there with you.
Well, the most ridiculous thing was I spoke to a friend, and she said, Sandy, you made the 6 o'clock news in Britain and you're not even dead. So that was good.
Because you're in hospital?
Yeah.
And you're fully recovered now?
I'm fine.
Well, we are on to the final chapter of your travel diaries. It has been so lovely chatting to you, Sandy.
Oh, you're so good.
Thank you. Chapter 7 is the destination that is at the top of your travel bucket list. Where is left for you to discover?
So I'm lucky enough to be going to Japan next year, and that's absolutely been top of my list for a very long time. I'm going to Tokyo and Kyoto and Osaka. I am going for work.
Yeah.
So I've been hosting a women's conference for many years now that moves around the world. It's been in Singapore and Paris and various places, and this year it's going to be in Osaka, which is very lucky. But it means that my beautiful Debbie, my wife, and I are going to take a little bit of extra time and spend time in Japan. And the thing I'm most interested about Japan is how they seem to have managed the twin track of being incredibly modern and respectful of the ancient at the same time. And they seem to manage those two things in parallel. And I love that. It's respect for the past and interest in the future. So I'm hoping to love it.
I'm sure you will. It's the most mentioned. No, but it's the most mentioned destination on the podcast.
Is that right?
Yeah, for all-time favourites or bucket list actually, but certainly for all-time favourites. And I think it is that respect for tradition, for ritual, which I imagine you'll love. So that's really exciting. How wonderful! I hope you have a brilliant time.
Thank you. I'm very excited. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sandi Toksvig. Those were your travel diaries. It's been an absolute honour. Thank you.